Okay, so hear me out. You don't have a soul inside of you. Your soul has a human inside of it. Your soul was given that human when you were born and asked to take good care of it, to cherish it, to love on it, to guide and nurture it. How is that going? If we're being honest, most of us are more focused on how other people are showing up for our human than how we're showing up for ourselves. And while receiving care and nurturance and support from other people is so important, when we're little, that is really what forms the building blocks for what we will later expect in relationship from other people and for how we engage with ourselves. So yes, external relationships are so important. I don't want to minimize that. But your soul wasn't given a human so that it could go its whole life in search of the right care, nurturance, and support from other people. And certainly not so that we would go our whole lives caught in a loop about how other people don't show up for us in these ways. Outside of childhood, the work becomes very much an inside job. Even in couples therapy, so often the process becomes about trying to support each individual person to begin to show up for themselves in a way that's more fully and authentically aligned so that they can then begin to show up that way in the relationship. They have to first learn how to allow themselves to be seen by themselves so that they can then truly be seen by their loved one. Only then is true connection and honest communication even possible. Until we really learn how to identify our needs, provide for our own needs, nurture ourselves from a position of having needs, of having feelings, and that being not only okay, but essential in order to really learn about who we are and what it is we want out of our own lives, let alone in a relationship. So how are you taking care of your human lately? How well do you know him or her? How often do you really listen to what it is they have to say to you? You are more than a body, but you came here to experience having one. There's something about learning how to care for that body, for that human, that is really important for our soul's evolution. So in honor of the idea of learning how to listen better, I have an exercise I wanted to talk through with you. It can be done as a mindfulness practice, or you can just sort of be sitting and thinking about it. You can journal about it. Really, you can do it any way that resonates the most with you. But it starts off with you envisioning yourself seated around a dinner table. And at the dinner table are all of the parts of you that you've become aware of. Maybe the inner child is sitting in a high chair. Maybe the angry teen version of you is sitting next to her because, of course, she's protecting her. Maybe there's a self-sabotaging version of you in the corner of the table over there. Maybe there's a fearful part that's seated right next to you. Think about all the various parts of you that you have become aware of on your healing journey, where you know that they exist, that they occasionally grab your attention, they occasionally try to steer your life in a direction that feels safer to them, and so on. So you're seated at this dinner table and they're all there. What a great opportunity for a family meeting. So once all of them get situated around your table, you want to imagine explaining why it is that you've gathered everyone together. And know that when I say you, I'm talking about you as inner parent, the you that is very patient and loving and really values each and every one of those parts of you around the table. The inner parent is truly you at a soul level. You want to imagine showing up in a way that feels really safe, that feels really open, that feels very curious, non-judgmental, loving, steady, bringing that presence to the room so that each part of you feels free to engage in the conversation. So once you feel like you've set that tone, you want to imagine posing some questions to this amazing gathering of you around the table. Here are some questions that you could ask one at a time and taking your time so that you get a chance to hear from each and every part that has something to say around the question. So after you ask a question, really attune yourself to the answer that each one of them might be giving you on the inside. Here are some questions you could then run through one at a time. For each one of them, you might want to ask, what is it that you feel like you really need at this time? And from each part's perspective, what do you feel like might be getting in the way of you getting that need met? For each part, it might also be really powerful to ask, what have you been carrying for a really long time and why? asking each part to open up about what it is that burdens them and why it is that it's hard to put that burden down. It might also be interesting to ask each part, if you knew that everything was going to work out, what would you do next? The answer to this question might clue you into a version of yourself that is really waiting to be born, but that's being held back by this block, by this need that's not getting met by a particular part. And therefore that's keeping that part trapped and held back from doing that thing that it really would like to do if it knew everything was going to be okay. You might also want to ask each part, what version of you do you feel that I've been ignoring? This might be another way to get at unmet need. And when I'm talking about need, I mean need that this part has of you. Another really interesting question might be, for each part, what is it that you're afraid to say out loud? Because if you do, you fear it might change everything. And finally, another question that could be really great to ask is, if we were to imagine a future version of us that has it all figured out, what do we refuse to tolerate anymore? And listen to each part's response carefully, because this really holds the key to core changes that might need to be made in your life. And if you hadn't really listened to each part, you might have never become aware that that was a change that needed to be made, that something can no longer be tolerated. Now, keep in mind when you're asking these questions and you're feeling through the answers of each part, it's very common for parts to disagree with one another and to have completely different visions about what needs to happen. Your job as inner parent, as you're facilitating this dinner conversation, this family meeting, is simply to gather information from all of them so that you start to learn more about the human that lives inside of you as a soul. This is really just the first step, but it is an extremely powerful one. When you're done gathering all the information that you feel like you needed to gather from each of your parts, you can wrap up the meeting any way you want to. You just want to make sure you're communicating love and gratitude and appreciation for every single little bit of information your parts were able to share with you. Something that I think you'll find is the more that you engage in activities that allow you to hear your parts, whether it's through a somatic practice or a visualization or journaling or whatever the case may be, the more and more they start to communicate to you. So allow this to be a process. Your parts don't have to and probably won't tell you every single thing it is they have to say at that family meeting. It would probably be pretty overwhelming if they did. But what this really allows you to do is learn how to show up as a really wise and loving and nurturing leader inside your own life, to develop self-leadership in a way that's compassionate toward you. Imagine then engaging in relationships, having met some sort of standard of connection with yourself and trust in your own self-leadership. It doesn't happen overnight, but it truly does unlock a whole other layer, a whole other level of potential for authentic and more fully aligned connections. As always, please be really patient with yourself. Allow all of this to be a process that unfolds over time. Trust yourself and your intuition. Simply committing to showing up over and over again for yourself is what it's all about, because as long as you're showing up, you're still engaged in the work. And that's all that we can really ask of ourselves. Anyway, I hope that was helpful, and I'll get out a new video soon. Bye.